It's time to plant potatoes in warm winter climates and in cold winter climates. Now, when I say warm winter climates, I'm talking about zones 9 to 11, where you don't get a freeze and you get maybe a little frost, but not all that much. Cold winter climates are anything colder than that, so zones 8B and lower. Potato plants can withstand temperatures down to 25 degrees Fahrenheit, but only for very short durations. We're talking a few hours. So I'm in zone 9B 10A. There are two different ways to plant potatoes. One involves no planting at all. It's really easy. I'll get there in a minute. Some tips if you are in a cold climate, so below zone 9. Number one, you want to plant deep, at least 8 inches deep. So you're going to need to dig a trench, put some fertilizer in the bottom of that trench, put your potatoes in, fill the trench back up, and then mulch on top of that. At least 6 inches of mulch. Anything that's organic, going to break down, straw, pine needles, wood shavings, grass clippings, leaves, anything. A great tip is to plant larger potatoes. They have to get through a cold winter, probably a long cold winter. And so the bigger the potato, the longer they're going to last. And they need the energy from that large potato to push through 8 inches of soil and then 6 inches of mulch. Now, for those of us in zones 9 to 11, there is a much easier way. And those of you who are in colder than that, tuck this information away, because in spring, you could plant potatoes just like I'm going to explain. Now, when I heard about this method, I seriously didn't believe it. It was too good to be true. But I tested it out a couple of years ago. I did a bed of this way and a bed of the traditional way, where you dig the trench and put the potatoes in there. And by the end of the season, they both had almost identical results in terms of weight of the harvested potatoes. I'll link that video down in the description, and I'll link it at the end of this video so you can see how I did it both ways and the outcome. What this method entails, when you boil it down, is very simple. You throw the potatoes on top of the ground with some fertilizer, you cover them with straw, you keep them watered, wait a few months, pull the straw away, and you've got a whole crop of potatoes laying there on the ground for you to pick up. Yep, that's it. There's no digging before or after. There's no digging for the trenches. There's no digging to dig the potatoes up. Let me know in the comments if you're just hearing this and it is blowing your mind the same way it did mine, or let me know if you've done this before and what your results were. So I'm going to get started planting. The first thing to do is remove the summer mulch. In this case, it was pine shavings. The next thing I did was to amend the bed with fresh compost. I always top up my beds every season with a couple of inches of nice new compost. Now, right on top of that, I'm putting down some granulated organic fertilizer. This happens to be Neptune's Harvest crab and lobster shell and kelp meal. I'm putting a very liberal amount down, and because it's organic, it's not going to harm the potatoes at all, so I don't even have to dig it into the soil. And just a note, you can also use blood meal and bone meal instead of the Neptune's Harvest. And now I just have to place my potatoes about a foot apart. Now, these are potatoes that I harvested a few months ago. I saved some to plant again. You can use seed potatoes you bought from the garden center, or, and I'm bucking the system here, you can use regular potatoes from the produce section of the grocery store. The downside of that is you may not know the variety. So if you end up liking them, the only way to make sure you grow that variety again is to save some potatoes like I did and then plant them again. Some people say, as I used to, that you need to plant seed potatoes because they're more disease resistant. But after my own experimentation and hearing from so many of you, I've come to the conclusion that grocery store potatoes work just fine. I grew these in the spring that I'm planting now from a bag of Costco potatoes, for the simple reason that they are about 75% cheaper than seed potatoes from the garden center. Now, you might notice that a lot of these potatoes are not pre-sprouted. Not in fall, it's not necessary. Pre-sprouting or chitting is great in cold climates when you're planting in the spring. It simply involves putting your potatoes single layer in bright light and getting them to sprout earlier than they would outside. Right now, we don't need that. In warm winter climates, it's warm already. And in cold winter climates, you don't want them sprouting yet. Some people choose to cut their potatoes up, leaving a couple of eyes on each piece and planting them that way. You can get more plants that way because each one of those pieces will produce a plant. But any potato smaller than an egg should not be cut. It should be planted whole. And planting now in cold winter climates, I would definitely not do that. You want the biggest potato possible. All right, now all of my potatoes are placed in the soil, and we just need to cover them up. And a nice, thick 6-inch layer of straw will do the trick. I like straw for this because it's heavier than the pine shavings I normally use for all the other beds. It stacks up higher than wood shavings, and it's easier to clear away at harvest time. In warmer climates, the decision to plant in fall is an easy one. It's an extra potato harvest. We can plant now and harvest in spring, then plant another crop in spring and harvest in summer. In cold winter climates, the reason to plant in fall is just to save you time in spring. Spring is a busy time of year for most of us, and if you've already got that job tackled and they're in the ground and they're waiting to come up when the time is right, you can think about other things. Again, if you want to see that video where I tested this out with the traditional method and this method, go ahead and click on that right there, and I'll see you guys next time.